Greetings and welcome to Star Trek Discovery Pod, a sometimes funny and trying to be smart podcast covering all things new and classic Trek. I'm your current acting captain, Mariah Gossett. With me on the view screen, we have.
I forgot a pun. Again, I forgot. I keep on doing this. I don't know why I keep on doing
There's
this.
no episode to make a pun at. It's okay, Paul.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm Paul Satachin, everyone.
And we also have joining us tonight.
Hi, I'm Tony Kim.
Welcome, Tony. We're so glad you're here. And Clyde
Haynes.
Beaming in at the last second. Tonight we are going to have a good old-fashioned nerdy Trek chat hangout. We're going to be talking about some questions from the live stream. So if you have them, start thinking about that. We'll talk about some of our favorite Trek moments. We're going to obviously talk about Trek merchandising and all of the things we love to purchase and put in our homes. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the conventions and cons that are coming up. But first, Paul, can you remind people where they can find us on the internet?
Yes. Let's see. Hey, people. I'm supposed to remind you where you can find us on the internet. So if you like our stuff, like listen, rewind. Paul, remind the listeners to subscribe to podcasts. To the oh my god, I'm falling apart.
It's okay. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You can find all our links at StarTrekPod.co. And maybe, Paul, you can talk about the Patreon. I believe in you.
Yes, we have a Patreon. If you like our episodes, and if you don't like me, still subscribe. Just for $2 per episode at patreon.com/StarTrekPod.
Indeed. And Clyde, would you like to tell folks how they can participate in the chat this evening if they're tuning in live?
Yes, smoke signals tonight. That's how you can get us. No, seriously, if you are watching us live on your streaming platform, then we just ask that you type capital P, capital O, capital D, capital pod in the chat, and that will let us know about your thoughts, your comments, your questions, and we'd be happy to peruse them and just maybe talk about them live on air.
Indeed. Thank you all.
I have that Bajoran design disease on Deep Space Nine where it made people like not be able to talk. Do you remember that episode? Like season 1? Anyone?
Oh,
well, that's what
deep cut.
Deep cut. That's right. Season 1 is definitely deep cut, but but yeah, that's how it feels like right now.
I believe in you, Paul. You can come back from this.
We're gonna find out. I'm in penalty box.
Yes. But obviously tonight we are joined by our very special guest, Tony B. Kim. Tony, I would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience. And my first question I always love asking people is, what was your gateway into Star Trek?
Yeah, so my company is called Hero Within. We do kind of sophisticated geek fashion apparel for fans, and we've worked with great brands like Marvel and DC and Godzilla, Doctor Who, and we proudly represent Star Trek as well. So we've been in business for, how long has it been now? This is like our 6th year. It feels like the 60th year after the pandemic. But we've been really so excited to be able to create and design and produce Star Trek merch. And it's really one of my first geek loves. And, to your question of how, the gateway into Star Trek, I remember being like, I was teeny tiny, and I was, maybe 7 or 8 years old or something like that. And my older brother, who, you always love whatever your older brother's into or older siblings into. And he told me that there is this movie coming out called Star Trek the Motion Picture that is based on this old TV show. And I remember being so young and thinking to myself, wait a minute, they took like characters from a TV show and like it's the same characters in the movie, and like they're like continuing their story. Like I remember just being so fascinated with that concept that like these characters lived outside of like the television world. They could live in other mediums like comics and movies and other things like that. So
what a novel concept now.
of course, then, yeah, right. And of course, back then, all we had were like newspaper clippings and things like that. So there was nothing. There was this, these big articles that have come out announcing the motion picture, and it was like a year out from releasing it. So during that year waiting, and while all my friends were into Star Wars, and I love Star Wars too, but while they were all into other properties, my brother and I were just counting down the days till Star Trek: The Motion Picture came out, and we were in preparation. We just like committed ourselves to watch, just be able to catch the original series when it was airing. Of course, there was no VHS or no DVR or anything like that, so we were just kind of catching it, whenever it was playing on TV. And the movie came out, and for a lot of it wasn't popular for a lot of 8-year-olds out there, but I fell in love. It just was, I couldn't believe it. It was beautiful, and it was so like magical, and it really like transported me to truly to the 23rd century. And ever since then, I never looked back, and I was at every opening of every Star Wars or Star Trek ever since. And so that's kind of how I got into to thank my brother for it. But honestly, it was this full page spread, or full page black and white newspaper spread of the Enterprise, and the cast were, it was a big photo of the Enterprise with the cast standing in front, and that image just captured my imagination at a young age.
I mean that it sounds really relatable. I'm trying to think of what my first Star Trek movie experience was, and I think going to a theater for me, it was Star Trek 2009, because there was such a big gap, because I grew up watching Voyager and some of TNG, but truly I didn't get to have that Trek movie in a theater on the big screen experience until 2009. Clyde and Paul, what was your first Star Trek movie experience, like going to the theater and seeing it?
Clyde, where'd you go?
I think for me, it was, I want to say Generations, maybe.
Really, that late?
I don't know. I'm trying to think. The first like TNG, because that was really my thing. It's like, I think I don't know that I saw any of the original series movies actually in the theater.
Wow.
Right. But I think the minute that I was seeing this crossover, that's not true. I want to say, was it like Star Trek 5 or 6?
Like, is there like, what does God need with a starship, or was it like, Shakespeare in Klingon?
I'm trying to think. I remember Generations, because I was like, now we're getting into my Trek, right? Because to me, TOS was always my mom's Trek for a while, right? Because I remember my mother was a big Trekkie, and so it'd be a Saturday afternoon, I'd pop out from my room, and she was in the living room watching Trek, and I was like, "What is this?" And then I couldn't leave. I just wanted like, okay, what's happening next? And I remember seeing it, but it wasn't really like. So I've probably seen a bunch of the original series, but it wasn't really mine.
Gotcha.
And so I remember watching the movies, but usually on VHF, or when they came on HBO or something like that. But I was all into TNG from day one, and so when Generations came out, I was like, count me in. Yeah.
Like for me, like I remember wanting to see Wrath of Khan, because I was a big Space Seed fan. Like like how can you not be in that episode, right? And I couldn't get a ride to the theater. Like no one was giving me a ride.
Is this where this stems from, Paul? I don't know if people know, but Paul is like the friend you can count on who is always willing to give you a ride to the airport in Los Angeles, which is like the rarest quality in a friend, I have come to find out. So is this like the deep-seated trauma, Paul, that has made you the reliable transport?
I didn't drive till I was 21. And so when my parents or my people go like, why don't you drive? Well, I got people to drive me,
Yeah.
but like, because I'm an asshole. But like, but at like, once I started driving, I go, well, now I got to pay it forward or pay back, like. But yeah, so I remember watching Star Trek 3 in the theater. But it was just Star Trek 3 isn't one of my favorite ones. So, but I remember being in San Francisco watching Star Trek 4, like waiting in line.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it was a really big deal. Like it was a great theater, and it was just really like, say what you will about 4, like because Wales, but like it was
my favorite one.
It was really it was really fun, and I was probably old enough to really appreciate it, like like just enough to go like, oh, this is all great, and like and I was living in San Francisco at the time, like I was like maybe 13 or whatever, so it all just meant something, and like as far as like that's the like, and ever since then, like I'm like day 1 or 2 of going to see Star Trek movies, like when they're out, but like but definitely like that 4 is the one where I go like that's like a peak season of going out to see Star Trek movies for me.
I like that a lot. That leads me to another question I love asking folks, is if you have a favorite Trek memory. So this isn't often like, it doesn't have to be your first memory of Trek, but if you have one that you particularly enjoy, that's like fun, that you've like, I don't know, interacted with other fans at cons, or maybe it is like a time you got to share Star Trek with someone who has never experienced it before. What about you, Tony?
Geez, so many memories to choose from, so many great memories, and the one I'm about to share probably isn't so great, but it's also really awesome. Paul already mentioned this, but I remember my Star Trek 1 experience. Could not wait to see Star Trek 2, of course, and I was so devastated with the loss of Spock in that movie.
Oh, sure,
like, it was the first time I ever cried in a movie theater, and it was the first time that I, as a young kid, I experienced loss. Like, it felt this genuine sense, like I lost someone real. I could not, I couldn't believe it, and because even at that time, it was like. When you think about all, there wasn't a ton of big franchises out. There was Star Wars, and just like how it was like, spoiler alert, like Darth Vader is Luke's father, and he loses the hand. And
what?
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert! I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Forever ruined. I'm forever ruined now. I don't.
But that same level of just like the shock and awe of that occurring, was it was. I couldn't believe it. So.
For me, like it was the first time.
Yeah,
it was the first time that I go like, "Oh, a hero can die in a movie."
Yeah.
I was like, "What? Well, what just happened?" And Kirk going like, "In all my travels, he's the most human."
But besides the fact that that's like that is my favorite Star Trek movie, it was so incredible. So besides the fact that the movie itself was so amazing, that moment and walking out of that theater and just feeling like it felt to me that like I had lost someone that I actually knew, and so that kind of at a young age really informed me about the power of storytelling, and that even though these are imaginary characters, they still impact us in very real ways. And so just kind of dealing with loss and grief and all that sort of stuff. And then they announced Star Trek: The Search for Spock, and I thought, maybe he's coming back. I had a suspicion he might be coming back, but yeah, that's probably what's burned in my brain after all these years.
Awesome.
I like that. Paul, Clyde, anything you want to share?
I talk about this often, and that is just for me, especially in the 90s, how important it was to really see someone who looked like me on television, and even more so a nerd. So to see Geordi, and this is gonna sound kind of interesting or weird, but also to see his love interest and failure, and so spectacular failure of love interest to
You're like, oh,
like to a hottie.
it just it was like, oh, he gets it. Like yes, like this is me. And not only was it me, but it was some friends of mine that we could, like, it was just like, wow, we felt seen. And so to be able to talk to other, guys about Trek and to really nerd out about Trek was like, like we can really get into this and have conversations. And I don't feel weird. Like I thought it was like, that was just something special to me. Like, that water cooler conversation that you have, this was different.
Love it. For me, I think it was a rerun episode of a Voyager episode, Taylor, Tinker, Soldier, Doctor. So like I had gone, I was on a date. This is back when the swing dancing was the thing, and I had dropped I was dropping this girl off and she asked me like, hey, do you want to come upstairs and watch Voyager? Because Voyager had come on, like, was at that time in LA, it was on at like 11 or midnight, and so like I go, well, yes, I would, and so we're watching the episode, and I didn't know to say date was like maybe a little too presumptuous. I didn't know if she liked me. We went out swing dancing, but like you can be platonic, and so throughout the episode, I didn't know if this was just friends who happened to be watching Star Trek at midnight after swing dancing, or if it was anything that happened. So I kind of like was very good and stayed like on my corner of the couch. But apparently, there was like a gravitational anomaly that kind of pulled her closer and closer to me. And at the end of the episode, she was like basically like on my lap, and so like we made out for a bit, and like 4 months later I married her.
No.
Wild.
And we're still married, and we're still watching Star Trek together. Like yesterday I was I thought for some reason that Strange New World was premiering, and so we're up at 11:30. Go, we're gonna watch Star Trek.
We're so excited.
And then it's not, and we're going like, oh man, that just sucks, So we still like Star Trek nerd together, and so I guess I have to say that as my like one of my favorite memories. You missed it, Clyde. It was so
good. Sweet story.
I heard every word of you making out to Star Trek on your couch.
That's right.
I was going to plug one of my favorite Star Trek memories is actually watching The Killing Game from Voyager for the first time.
Really? The Herodians.
Yeah, I think it was like, I have a special place in my heart for holodeck episodes, but I think it was like,
I love it. And Nazi holodeck episodes.
Well, I think it was because it was at the time I was taking like world history, and I was like, oh, this is like them talking about, it was like all of the pieces came together in my young little like
sure.
Like 10th grader mind, where I was like, oh, like you can talk about history in these like fun fantastical ways, and like it was like true magic of television, I was like, oh, it's already magical that it's like in the future, but then we're gonna add this extra layer on top of it. Yeah, I don't know.
No, like it's a good episode. Yeah. It's a good episode. Like it's a Harry
two-parter,
Yeah, Harry Kim Ford episode. He's the one holding it all together, right?
He's trying his hardest.
If I could add just one more little memory that was important to me, piggybacking off what Clyde was saying, back in the 70s and 80s, there for my brother and I, there wasn't, if you ever saw an Asian on TV, he was like karate experts, or he was like the uber nerd kind of thing. And so for us, seeing Sulu on screen was really like the first time that we saw somebody that was like, he was cool. I mean, he was flying this Enterprise, and I remember thinking to myself, like, and of course the whole cast kind of being diverse, and just thinking, wow, like And at that particular time, I remember thinking, my brother and I feeling very sort of marginalized in our community and just not really felt understood. And then realizing that, oh, there's like a vision and a version of the world where like diversity is embraced, and there's like representation. And I remember just being very inspired by that as a young kid.
Yeah, I think that's
I couldn't
what.
agree more, Tony.
100%. I think it's like why we still love, at least to me, it's like part of the reason I still love that the franchise continues today and like continues to evolve and what it means to have infinite diversity and infinite combinations, right? It's like as our world has expanded, the Star Trek world has expanded, and it's nice to see that like they're like, oh, I can see where society is going and we can like match it and surpass it in that way. We've got
it's a compass, right? It's a good compass for where we not where we are, but where we could be.
100%. We've got a couple of questions and some memories here in the chat I thought I would share. So Kuhn says, Pod, Garrett Wang had dinner with members of my Star Trek club.
Oh.
This may be slightly mean, but I jokingly told him I outranked him now as a lieutenant.
Like it sucks because like, so you have like, Harry as an ensign and like, and you have like Tom Paris coming in from jail and he's still a lieutenant and he and throughout the whole series until the water planet episode, like it's not that Harry gets promoted, it's like Paris gets demoted. I'm just saying. Always keeping the Garrett Wang down.
So mean. Let's see. Marge asks a question for Tony. What makes us want to dress like our heroes? That's a fun question. What do you think?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. I think we want to, it's funny because and this kind of ties into our backstory as a company is that, as we were all, nerds when we were younger, I think our instinct was, in our teens or maybe as a young adult, whatever, to sort of hide that, to suppress that, to like kind of not to be considered a nerd. But then now things have so much has changed. The landscape of pop culture has changed to where it's cool to be weird and it's cool to be different and strange and normal and perfect is so boring, right? So one of the reasons why we started Here Within was this whole idea that we shouldn't feel like that there's a separate inside and then there's a separate outside, that it should be the same. Like whatever is you're passionate about on the inside, you should be able to reflect that on the outside and be proud, whether you're in a social environment or at work or at play or wherever you're at. You should feel like that you can kind of represent what you love. So I have in my closet a stack up to my head of the black t-shirts and hoodies that have the big graphic prints, which are fine, nothing wrong with graphic prints, but there are needs to be able to be fashion forward and to represent what your passions are in all kinds of settings. So that whole idea of like, why we should dress like our heroes is we should be able to represent what we love all the time, wherever we're at, and so that was kind of the part of the genesis of starting, Here Within, was this idea of dressing like your heroes in a way that's, is flattering and is, that makes you feel good about yourself.
I love that. I was recently watching an episode of Jeopardy, and like one of the contestants was wearing she had this dress that had like the Star Wars Rebel emblem on it, but it was so subtle. It was just like a pattern on the sleeve, and I was like, oh, like I had to really look. It took me a few times, but I was like, that's really cool that it's like it looked like something nice enough that you could wear as a contestant on Jeopardy, but then it had these like subtle things that gave us a glimmer into her personality and what she likes, right?
See, that's the stuff I love. I love the subtlety, but when you talk about like a glimmer, I'm always thinking that we're people who are trying to find our tribe. And so I like those subtle things where people are like, oh, I get that. Someone in, Chupi in the chat says you can wear sports stuff every day. Like if you've got a favorite sports team, and like I'm a Bears fan, or for a long time being a Cubs fan,
Mhm.
and you see someone with a Cubs hat, you're like, like you get it, right? So when I wear a Star Trek shirt, like I have one that I think is subtle. It's got 4 lights on it, and it says there are 4 lights, and I'm going, if you comment to me on this, then I know you really understand what it is that you just saw, right? Like it's an inside joke, and it's like, oh, you're probably one of my people. And so I that's why I love thinking like we're this community. And yeah.
It's always go ahead, Paul.
I was gonna say, like, my wife and I, like, recently, as in like 2 days ago, had this conversation about like how do we make capes come back into fashion. Like a business casual cape. Like,
absolutely,
that would be fun. I always think that I have this I like when it is like those sort of inside jokes, because although I'm like, sometimes I wonder what people are thinking the shirt actually is if they have no idea what it means at all. Like I have this print from What We Do in the Shadows, the original movie that came out, and it's an image of a cat, but with Jermaine's face on it, because the joke in the movie is that he can transform into other things, but he can never get the face right. And so it's just like this very strange shirt, though. And I've had a lot of people being like, "Oh, that's a very interesting shirt," and then you try to explain it, and then other people who've come up and they're like, "Oh my god, I love your shirt!" Like that instant recognition is super fun. There was another good question. Another one from Marge. Who is your hero? You had to pick one, Tony.
Oh gosh. Geez, that's
yeah. We could keep it in nerddom, or we can go IRL. Like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, just to stay on topic. I think Data and Brent Spiner is probably would be one of my heroes, just because I don't, so many fantastic characters in the 50 plus years of Star Trek, but at the core of what Star Trek is what does it mean to be human? The sort of wrestling with humanity. And I don't know if there's a better character, even more than Spock. I think I love Spock, incredibly love Spock, but like Data and what he's been through, especially as we conclude his seemingly conclude in Picard season 3, how he has wrestled with his humanity over the span of several decades. I think there's just something for everybody to relate to that, and I was so touched with how they handled him in season 3, and the fact that he finally arrived in this human body, but it was far from everything that it's cracked up to be. Like it presented a whole new set of challenges for him, and so I had tons of heroes for sure, but I just think that that character, and of course the brilliant performance of Brent Spiner, he's been such a gift to Star Trek, and as I'm sure everyone would agree to. But yeah, I think his portrayal and that character, one of my favorites for sure.
Absolutely, that's a good answer.
I mean, not to go against it, but like the actual correct answer is Peanut Hamper.
It's Peanut Hamper. Oh, wow!
Right, but bam! Mama said, "Knock you out."
Who knew?
I was sitting there thinking, like,
we were going to get through this really nice interview and not have a Peanut Hamper moment.
So, I'm not going to say I thought that, because I completely forgot about it. And here in my mind, I'm thinking, if Mariah asked me, I should shock Paul and go, Shaw. My hero is Shaw, right? It's not, but I thought you would get a kick out of that. I would. And so when you started saying, oh, not to go against, I was like, oh, he's gonna say Shaw, and then boom, you hit me with the Peanut Hamper. You got me again every week.
The way to have done it better is for us to have set up with Tony earlier, for him to go like, my favorite is Data, but until Peanut Hamper. That would have been the perfect setup.
If we had it. But Tony, if you're unaware, we somehow managed to bring up Peanut Hamper in every episode.
Okay.
She is truly our mascot of this podcast.
All right.
in some
Love
way,
it.
shape, or form. I am trying to think. I mean, I think it's Ahura and specifically Nichelle Nichols would have to be, I think, my selection, just
Oh, I
because
thought you were gonna say Kate Mulgrew for sure.
I
I
would
knew
have
you were
guessed
gonna
that
say
too.
Kate.
I would have guessed
I
Janeway.
I love Kate Mulgrew and I love Janeway, but I think it's like both on and off screen, like what she was able to do with the platform that she was given is
Sure, sure,
like just so incredible. And just like, I mean, I love her in all of the movies, like the animated series. She gets some really great moments and some really fun storylines. Like my favorite episode of the animated series is when all of the guys go down to the planet and all the women are left to run the ship, and then all the men get hypnotized, and it's like they have like the women have to save the day, and it's like one of my favorites. But yeah, I mean, she did so much. Like the fact that there's a Drunk History episode about Nichelle Nichols is like it cements her, I think, in like that hero canon for me.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Like my real choice is not Peanut Hamper, but if I had to choose, like it's an unlikely one, but like it's Nog from
That is one.
because like for me, he's the person who kind of risks the most to be what he really is. Like he's a Ferengi who eventually wants to go into Starfleet. He kind of turns his back on what his culture advocates for this vision of who he thinks that he can and should be for like the nobler purpose, blah 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 blah. And and there's such growth. Like you could see him go from a kid to an adult in a way that like it just resonates with me. So like I go like in that kind of like if you're Picard or Kirk, you have like Captain Superpower. But if you're just like some kid on like running around the Deep Space Nine, and you become the first Ferengi captain, like it's something.
For me, I say it all the time. Everyone in the chat's going to know that I have a certain affinity for LeVar Burton, but I also think now that I'm going back and rewatching, and it's like I'm in a different stage of life. I'm a different person now. There's a certain I'm drawn to Sisko. And the reason why I'm drawn to Sisko is one, he's so different, but it's also this sense of being a dad, right? And so as a dad, I'm seeing my favorite franchise through this different lens, right? How do you balance the sense of leadership, work, and also being a father, and particularly being a father where you've got a son who's not particularly happy that he's there, and you're trying to make a life for him, and it's really, really difficult. But there's just that work-life balance kind of, in a noble profession. I'm seeing Sisko in a different light these days.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what's so lovely about there being so many different Trek series, right? And like why I get excited when we get things like the announcement about the Academy series. It's like all of these different avenues for people to find themselves in these shows, and that it can grow and change over time, because it's like, yeah, like definitely I think I would have said Kate Mulgrew for such a long time, but I think at this point I'm like a little burnt out on being like career leader boss living off of coffee, and it's like, oh, but there's someone else I can kind of gravitate towards for a little while and like appreciate that all of these different facets can like be a part of how you learn from these characters and like appreciate these characters.
Who subtly is, I think when it's all said and done, absolutely is making a play to be on my Mount Rushmore of Star Trek captains.
Ooh, Mount Rushmore. I like that.
Is Pike. Like, and that's so interesting because you're talking about we're now in a renaissance of like a new rebirth, if you will, of Star Trek. If you had asked me 2 years ago, Pike wouldn't have even been a thought, right? And now I'm like, he might be in the top 2 or 3, definitely top 4. Like I'm if this trajectory continues, and I can't wait for this next season. But I'm really feeling Pike.
I just ordered got my
Ooh.
My
One.
Strange New Worlds phaser. So
Nice.
isn't that
For
cool?
the audio only listeners, Tony is showing off a really cool Strange New Worlds phaser.
Yeah.
All the bells and whistles.
Yeah. I've been also trying to grow my Pikes Peak out as well. So
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not-
that's tough.
It's looking good, Tony.
Yeah,
I've been
I'm
working on it
trying.
too. It's a tough do.
It is. It's very
I'm
impressive. Like when I'm watching the episode,
trying.
I just find myself just staring at his hair. I'm just like, I'm mesmerized by it.
I wonder what it's like. I recently got to meet Tan France in person from the Queer Eye series, who also has pretty iconic gray hair with a big
Sure.
swoop, and like seriously not a hair out of place. And I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder if he has like an insurance policy on his hair. Like, does Paramount have insurance on Anson's
Yeah.
like hairline? Like, I mean, I'm sure they also use a lot of wigs. Almost all television shows use wigs for continuity purposes, but they're doing a great job. I wanted to ask, we've heard a little bit about, your story of Hero Within, but I had a question about like what fandoms do y'all decide to create apparel with? I know there's also like all the licensing that goes into all of that I'm sure is a fun bout of paperwork that no one really wants to hear about.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do y'all decide what fandoms that you're kind of working with as a brand?
Well, for me, I have to. I'm really best motivated by creating merchandise around fandoms that I'm personally just passionate about. I just feel like that I have to. We've all gone to cons. We've all shopped around, and we've all experienced when something doesn't come from an authentic place. Whether it's interaction or it's a piece of merchandise or whatever it is, things that feel like a cash grab or just feel like, oh, they're just they're phoning this in, and before I was doing Here Within, I was blogging and creating and podcasting with my website, Crazy for Comic-Con, where I just travel to different cons and, moderate panels and all that stuff. And, I always told myself that if I ever was in a position to create merchandise for fans, that it would come from an authentic place. So, so when we started Here Within, we've been fortunate to be able to work with some awesome brands like Marvel and DC and others. And for me, it's always just come from, I have to feel like that I am absolutely in love with this brand at this particular point. And I look out in the market and just see fans that kind of a void in the market, and we can fill it with certain things. And so when we capes, right, when we first picked up Star Trek, it was back in 2019. We barely had anything for it. It was like we just started with it, and if you can kind of remember, go back with me to 2019. There was very little new happening with Star Trek. I mean, it wasn't all these shows that we were experiencing now. No Lower Decks, no Strange New Worlds.
I think it was just maybe the beginning of the second season of Disco, right?
Yeah, it was still the very beginning, but that was kind of it. So when it started out, there honestly was not that much demand for Star Trek. Like we were seeing that all the more glitzier stuff like Marvel and stuff were on the rise, but the Star Trek demand was just kind of low. And so to kind of see over the course of the few years, of course, we had the pandemic and we have Paramount Plus launch and everything like that. Like just see it blow up and just to see like fans just reinvigorated and their love for, Star Trek sort of renewed. And so for me, it has to come from a genuine place, and to see kind of what has happened in the past few years with Star Trek, the sort of renaissance of Star Trek is experienced right now, could not bring me any greater joy. And it's so fun to be able to create stuff that, fans, love and are excited about and get, I have all kinds of hot opinions about. And, we get all kinds of suggestions to do this or that and fix this and that and do this and that and whatever. And to be able to do that now during this particular era of Star Trek is a huge privilege. So yeah, that's kind of where I don't want to do things that I don't love. Like I don't want to. There's a whole My Little Ponies and bronies and all that, awesome. But I don't know anything about that, so I just can't see myself. I'm sure I could find people that can do that, but I have to feel like if I'm going to be the spokesperson and really push things out, I have to personally love it. So
Yeah, that's interesting. I was thinking about what's like the strangest or strangest, maybe the most creative request you've ever gotten for a piece of merch.
yeah, I get I've gotten a lot of requests from the medical community. So people that want me to make pop culture branded like scrubs or doctor the what's it called, the robes, the jackets, the long coats, whatever they're so I get a lot of that. I get a lot of aquaware, like people want me to make what's it called, wetsuits. So I get a lot of wetsuit branded stuff.
Surfers want a rep.
Yeah, right.
An Aquaman wetsuit would be kind of hot.
So get a lot of that. Of course, pets. We get a lot of pets. All kinds of. Can you outfit my iguana or chihuahua or whatever that is? I mean, everything you can think of. You know, it's really kind of comical. Like every corner, a lot of military stuff, a lot of firemen, police wear. I mean, just literally every possible.
Everyone's like, I want my niche and this niche to come together.
yeah. So definitely a lot of that. So
that's cool. I this past weekend I went to the Austin Television Festival, which I highly recommend if anyone's ever looking to attend. It's a great time. And I went to this really interesting panel that was kind of on the importance of physical media and how it's been disappearing. And this was it was mostly from the point of view of like creators of television and how like I don't know if y'all know, but like the Simpsons don't create box sets of their show anymore. And I was like, oh, it's really interesting because I feel a bit spoiled in the Trek sphere about like I can order Blu-ray copies of all of the Trek shows right now. But it was interesting because on that panel, they're like, literally that could change tomorrow. If the demand even dips just like a little bit, they could just decide that it's not worth it. And they had the woman who wrote and created the show, Dickinson, which was great from Apple TV. Highly recommend it if you're into Emily Dickinson poems. And she was like, she had to like hound Apple to she got 4 copies of her show on Blu-ray. And so she has one, and then she gave one to like the Emily Dickinson Museum in Amherst, one to like a television library at Harvard, and one to like the Amherst Library, so that it was like this can exist somewhere. But I thought that was just so wild. So it's interesting to hear like, you know, as these fandoms continue to rise, and it's like, I know within the fandom communities, we're all like pretty avid consumers and purchasers of these things, but it's like, they could be gone tomorrow if they decide that they don't want to have it, you know? So I think that's interesting. Just putting that out there. That's really just my call to arms for everyone to say that you should be demanding DVD copies of your favorite TV shows.
And if you use our code.
Right. I just think that's interesting. You mentioned cons, so like purchasing a lot of the products or seeing products at cons that might not necessarily be like kind of up to par, or you can tell it's people who are just like not actually a part of the fandom. So spoiler alert, like I've been to South by Southwest, lots of big film festivals, but I've never been to a con, and I am going to San Diego Comic-Con this year for the first time.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for people starting to attend cons? What do you wish you knew your first con?
Well, you know, I've written extensively about the first time experience on my Crazy for Comic-Con website. I mean, you know, what's so great about a con is that whether it's your first time or it's your millionth time, they're so fun. They're so awesome. And it truly is one of the only places that you can go to where you feel like, oh, like I really do belong to a sort of a larger majority of weirdos, and it's awesome, you know. And you know, growing up, besides the fact of not having other Asians around, there were other geeks around, and so I'd always longed to be in a space where people kind of understood me and related to me and all that. So I think that for it is sincerely the most positive thing that you can experience at a con is just that kind of sense that we're all together in this. But I think the other big part is that the whole idea of infinite diversities and infinite combinations. The fact that when you go to a con, it is such a great experience to just experience so many different other fandoms. There's so many things out there that it is truly remarkable. Like every time I go to a con, how much new stuff that I'm learning, and I'm like, every time I don't recognize a cosplayer, I'm like, that's anime, right? That has to be anime right there. And, and just to see in the past couple of years, especially since the post-pandemic, anime has come on so strong at cons. I mean, it is just taken over. Even for those who are going to San Diego this year, you'll see that there's like a significant growth in the anime industry, especially when it comes to conventions. And so just to like go with an open mind and to experience new cons. If you go to San Diego Comic-Con, you have to do this whole rigmarole of getting it. If you want to get into a panel that you want to see, you have to get into the room like hours and hours earlier just to make sure you're in that room. So when you're in that room, you end up watching all these panels that you would not have wanted to attend. And from it, I've talked to this happened to me. I talked to so many people that became huge fans of something new because they just sort of like sat through something and saw the actors and watched the reels and all that and became like huge fans. And so when you go to con, it's just a great opportunity. Don't just stick to your own thing, like branch out, explore, try some new things, hang with some new fans, and you'll be surprised by the things that you fall in love with.
That's great. Clyde or Paul, have either of you done a con before?
Yeah, I've done a few. For Comic-Con, I would say bring good shoes. That's the key thing. Bring good shoes because you're walking a lot. Like Chupi just mentioned, Dragon Con. Dragon Con is like one of my favorite cons. It's like you just go for people watching. It's crazy.
We'll be exhibiting for the first time this year at Dragon Con.
Oh, awesome! So. Dragon Con is great.
Yeah,
I love Dragon Con. Yeah,
that one's in Atlanta, right?
Yep. Yeah. It's like in August, I think.
No, it's September.
September. Okay, yeah. So
beginning September.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's like the world's biggest cosplay show. So
yeah, like those are two that I go like are renowned. I think when in my heyday when I went to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, like I think it had become really popular for the industry to go down and like preview stuff like like I remember when Star Trek when they the Joss Whedon J.J. Abrams panel was out there. But I feel like that had pluses and minuses to it, like and I think for all of it, like people have gone like, oh, the juice isn't as worth the squeeze for the industry. So now I feel like it's come more back to the fans a little bit. So I think that's a good thing. Just my hot take. What do I know?
Mariah. So for me, I've been to South by Southwest. I've been to ATX. Like I used to go to ATX all the time, but I haven't really been to like a Comic-Con. Now that being said, I'm the guy who hasn't been, but right after Comic-Con, like I'm reading all the articles, right? I'm looking at all the pictures and going, oh, this is amazing. And oh, I can't believe that this was said. But I haven't been. So I'm a big fan from afar. But yeah.
Long time listener, first time caller.
First time caller, yeah.
First time for San Diego for you then. This is gonna be awesome.
Oh, I'm so excited.
It's going to be really cool. So you attend a lot of them. I feel like you've probably been to at least all of the ones I could probably even think of. Are there any in particular that you think are like unsung heroes of cons that you're like, this is one that like, if more people like it's a hidden gem, if you will.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good question. I mean, every con offers its own unique thing. I mean, I probably honestly, and this is not, I'm not pandering to the listeners, but the one that I've been so excited for and really so impressed by is Star Trek Las Vegas. And I started going. The first one was right after the pandemic, so or at least right at the tail end of it. So it was like 2021. So this will be a third year to go, and for the size of the it's a pretty small convention, and it's only the size of this hotel ballroom, this certain hotel ballroom. And so vendor wise, there's maybe, I don't know, maybe 50 vendors. It's not that many, but the fan to celebrity ratio, as far as the talent is concerned, is really amazing. It really is truly amazing. Like the access that you have to the cast of all these different shows, and it's a 5-day show, so it's just like you just talking Trek like 24/7 for 5 days straight. And it really is like, it's really it feels like it could be like 10 times larger, but the fact that it's intimate, and you truly can just there may be lines for certain celebrities, but it's not that long. I go to all the big ones like San Diego and New York and WonderCon and all these ones that you have to like wait in line for just like hours and hours, and these are like so modest, the lines, and of course the panels are awesome, but to me it's like it's very low key because everyone's there for 5 days, so no one's rushing to get anywhere, because you can you're going to be there for 5 days. And so again, just the access to the talent is really remarkable. And so if you are a big fan of Star Trek, it really is like, I think it's best bang for your buck, because it's not that crowded, and the lines aren't that long, and you'll meet more of the cast than you'll ever thought possible.
Yeah, that's good to know, because that's one of the reasons why I like, not to keep plugging them, but the ATX Television Festival, and like Clyde knows, it's like they keep it small. Like I think this was the first year I didn't get into one panel I wanted to go to, and it was because it was a micro panel and they only had like 40 seats available. So it was this very niche time. But like I saw everything I wanted to see. I was literally bumping shoulders with like Ted Danson, because there was a Cheers reunion. It was wild. Who, by the way, walks around the press room and introduces himself as like, "Hi, like I'm Ted Danson," and everyone has to be like, "We know." But very charming. But that's cool. Yeah, I haven't done. Paul, you've done Las Vegas before, right?
I was
Las Vegas?
there.
Or were you just there at the same time?
I was there for my friend's 50th birthday party last year. It was at the Bally's.
Yeah, and we're at the Bally's. Yeah,
we're playing roulette, and then there was this woman, and she was walking down the casino floor in this badass Pike jacket, like this gold Pike jacket, and I go, "Oh right, it's here!" And so I want to get a jacket like that, and I tried to get a day pass, and they sold out. And I was pissed. But now I'm in search for like a Pike jacket, like a Pike jacket I could wear every day, kind of.
Yeah.
I think Tony has the website for you.
Call me. To plug another one is a shameless plug is I am the main stage moderator for AwesomeCon in DC in 2 weekends. So not this weekend, but next. And I'm really excited because I'll get a chance to interview Karen Gillian from Guardians and the cast from Lord of the Rings. But I'm super excited about is I'll be on stage with LeVar Burton, so I'll get a chance to so I'm just
Clyde has died.
I'm
Burton forever.
But I'm super just like flipping out because that's gonna be so awesome. So I'm really excited about that. So if you're in the DC area, June 16th through the 18th, I'll be at AwesomeCon. But
that's
so cool.
That's awesome.
I know,
for AwesomeCon. Are you allowed to share anything about San Diego Comic-Con yet? It's okay if you're not. We can say check the socials.
Yeah, definitely. If you follow Here Within, you know that we always come out with new exclusives for the show. We'll definitely have a new selection of some jackets. We'll also have some bags, like sling bags. We'll have some of those. We'll have some new exclusive pins. The big thing right now has been our Star Trek Picard, the field jackets. And so we started pre-ordering during the season 3, and they really blew up. Like we were completely overwhelmed with the orders that we got for the field jacket. And the orders are now getting here, so we're actually shipping everything out right now. But we'll have field jackets on hand to sell at the show, and so that will be a big thing. Like people will definitely be that, and the Strange New Worlds, the away mission jacket, the gray leather jacket. So both those jackets will be in super high demand at the show, and so. So while that isn't necessarily an exclusive, it'll feel like an exclusive because the fans will be those 2 jackets will sell out quick at the show. So that's a big thing. And then we do have a pretty major announcement. It's too early to share details on it, but in the past we've done like offsite events, after parties and pre-parties and all that sort of stuff. And so all that to say is that we do have a big offsite experience planned. And so you can't give details just yet because they're all details are sort of come together. But those that are listening can kind of plan and expect the big announcement to come out pretty soon about that.
Very cool. So excited.
Yeah.
We just have a few minutes left, so I thought I would just ask, because next week is Strange New Worlds premiere for the 2nd season. Is there anything you're looking forward to in particular, or something you hope that happens this season?
Well, I mean, I don't know how close they'll stick to canon, but like I am so shipping Chapel and Spock. Like I just want that. I want that to happen so badly. I don't think it ever will. I think they'll keep teasing us all the way into the Kirk era. But you know, I love that story. I think that triangle that they have going on with T'Pring, who I can't remember his fiance. T'Pring.
What's her name?
One of the T. Anyway, but that little love triangle, I'm completely obsessed with that. So I can't wait to see what goes on there. So
yeah, I'm really, I mean, to no surprise, I'm really excited about the crossover episode with Lower Decks, which I think is going to be episodes. So they released all the titles for the season, which I thought was interesting. There's a couple that that have sparked my interest a little bit more than others. So there's like Among the Lotus Eaters, which also has Davy Perez as one of the co-writers, and he did a lot of the more like thriller horror-y episodes. So I was like, this could get really fun, maybe some fun Odyssey vibes. Maybe we get some interesting, I was like, something is in black and white on the poster. So I was like, maybe this has something to do with that. And then
the Gorn could be back.
Oh, I'm so excited for the Gorn to come back. And then These Old Scientists, I think it's the 7th episode. I think that's going to be our crossover, is my prediction.
What was the name again? What was the name of that one?
Those Old Scientists.
Interesting.
Well, what makes you think that that's the crossover episode?
Because I think that is a Mariner line talking about like the original, like talking about Kirk and Spock. Pretty sure that's a Lower Decks joke. Is Those Old Scientists.
Yeah. I don't know. I think for me, there are 3 things I can't wait to know more about. Right. So when we left last season, Una was being arrested, and I was like, that's got to be resolved for me. So I'm really into that. I am also incredibly interested in to see who becomes the next chief engineer. Like I feel like I need to know, because I'm always fascinated by chief engineers. And then kind of the third piece is I need to deal with, as we say on the pod, not my Kirk. I gotta.
Oh, that's right. Not my Kirk.
I need to experience this, and maybe we'll move from not my Kirk to maybe my Kirk by the end of the season. So those are the kind of 3 things that I'm keeping a close eye on in anticipation of the season opener next week.
Like for me, not that anyone asked,
I asked everybody, Paul.
Like the thing that I want to see that I didn't get serviced in season 1 is Sam Kirk, because like in TOS he dies. Like he dies in the episode where Spock goes blind for a little bit because of the space parasites. So like the fact that they brought him in, like I'd like to see his character fleshed out in some way, like such that like that episode means more to me, because like that episode means really nothing to me. Oh, it's your brother. Oh well. Oh Spock just got bit. That's been that's that episode. But like, but I feel like he's been like you only see Sam in the beginning, the second episode, and the last episode of season right. He's there. He's there going at the very end of the pilot. He's there when they're trying to destroy the asteroid, and he kind of goofs. And then he's at the very end in in the season finale, where tell me about your brother. So like I hope that they use Sam as opposed to just let him fade out.
Yeah, I'd like to see that too. Tony, is there anything else that you haven't talked about that you'd like to promote or plug that's coming up?
I'm exhibiting at a Pokemon convention next weekend in Orange County, so that's kind of interesting. As a side kind of gig and hustle with my kids, we buy, sell, and trade Pokemon cards, and so if you're into that and you're in Anaheim, then come to Card Party. And I already mentioned this already, but in a couple weekends, AwesomeCon in DC, so that'd be great too. Our next stop for Here Within will be San Diego Comic-Con, of course, in July. And then that's followed by just like, 10 days later, whatever, it's going to be Star Trek Las Vegas. So that's going to be here before we know it. And then Dragon Con in September, New York Comic-Con in October. And so you can catch us at any of those shows.
Flyer miles really adding up.
Right. They are. Yeah, they do.
Transporter fees.
Transporter fees.
I know. Like, I cannot wait till we make transporters a thing, because it will sure make it a lot easier on all of us that travel so much. But yeah, so we'll be all those cities, and it's going to be really great. I love this time of year between July and August, because it's like high, a lot of travel and a lot of interaction with fans, and yeah, I can't wait. So
great. Thank you again for joining us. This was such a fun delight. I love hearing everyone's journey with Star Trek, and getting to finally meet. I always joke, I was like, I have so many friends on the internet. Like, we all love and enjoy a lot of the same things, and we interact in those spaces. So it's always nice to put faces and voices to the tweets that we see on the internet. Thank you to everyone who joined us live. We appreciate your questions. The audio episode will be up this weekend. And we will be back next week for the premiere of Strange New Worlds. Very exciting. We are going to start a half an hour later because I have to work late. And sometimes life happens, but we will be live streaming. We will be live. We will have the episode up. I'm so excited to dig into this season. You can find us at StarTrekPod.co for all of our links. And I think that's it. Live long and prosper, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
At Star Trek Pod.
Yeah.
At Star Trek Pod. Thanks, Chupi. Thanks, Karen. Bye.
Thanks, Tony. Bye.